All right, it's a little past 6:30, so we can go ahead and call the meeting to order. And at this time, I'll let Jeff. You're going to talk about what we're going to do tonight.
Sir, thank you, Mayor. Jeff Armstrong, Director of Planning and Development Services. Glad to see everybody here tonight. We're getting excited about getting well along down the road on our comprehensive plan. We hope to get some good feedback from you all and hope you've had a chance to look at it some in the last several days. As a reminder, in addition to the hard copies, it is also on the website, so you can certainly direct all your friends and family and any others to the website. And I think in the presentation, Shad, you still have it in there, the address for that, so you'll see that in a little while. Again, as you'll remember, we contracted with Freese and Nichols to help us prepare the comprehensive plan. Well, late last year, actually, we started on this, and they'll take you a little bit through where we've been, but we really want to focus on what we've got here now and what's going to happen moving forward in the next month or two. So just to remind you of who's working with us from Freese and Nichols, Shad Como, he's our project manager, project director, whatever. He's in charge of getting this all together, and you'll be hearing from him. Alexis Garcia, she's done a whole lot of work on this project, and Dan Sefco, who's been with them forever. He's been in the field forever. But so they're all here tonight to again update you on where we're at, get additional feedback. Although you have a book in front of you, it is a draft, and there's plenty of time to make adjustments as you all see fit. So without any further ado, I'll invite Shad up and we can get started.
Good evening. Everybody's good? All right. I know it's a Tuesday in the summertime and you'd probably like to be somewhere else, but I'm glad you're here. As Jeff mentioned, we're kind of in our final stretch of the comprehensive plan. And so one of the goals that we like to achieve tonight is to get some feedback as we move forward. There might be some typos and things like that we'll get fixed, but we really want to hear about any major changes we might need or any adjustments like that. So as we go through the presentation, I'll break here and there. I'm not going to talk for 50 minutes and then open it up. We're going to kind of break after each section to give you time to ask any questions, make any comments, or things of that nature. So I think you guys know what a comprehensive plan is by now, and you had one in the past. But again, it's a high-level document that incorporates a lot of previous planning efforts. It incorporates where you are presently today, and in the mostly it looks forward to the future, and so you'll see a lot of that there. It's not set in stone, so it's a fluid document. It can be changed. We like to call it a living document. So there are some things that may be relevant today and important today, and maybe a couple of months from now or after this assignment is over, things might change. But again, it can be amended at any time. But it's one of your tools that you can really use, especially as the city develops and redevelops over time, to really help direct that growth and the vision for the community. These were the elements that were included in the comprehensive plan. We had future land use, mobility and circulation, housing and neighborhoods, community design and character, public safety, and health. This is the process that we went through. As was mentioned earlier, we started September last year. I think September 25th was our first engagement exercise and outreach at the Taste and Trade. And so we went through that data gathering for the most part of latter part of last year. Gathering as much information as possible. If you recall, there was a survey that was given as well. And then phase 2, we started to look a little deeper at the various elements within the comprehensive plan. That we had a workshop with you all, and we rolled out maps and had some exercises that we did. And then this phase 3 is pretty much developing the draft comprehensive plan, receiving feedback from the community, from you all, and stakeholders as well. So this is just a snapshot of the various input that we had throughout the process. As I mentioned, we started back in September. We had the online survey. We had meetings with the stakeholder, community meeting. We also had some workshops with city staff. We met with stakeholders as well. And then most recently, last week, we met with the stakeholders to give them a brief and present the draft plan to them, as well as the community on last Tuesday. Just a couple of the meetings that we had throughout the process. And you all everybody attended the meetings, right? We don't have anybody that didn't show up to any, right? All right, great. So from that information that we gathered from the surveys, from the various meetings that we had with you all, there were certain themes and patterns that bubbled to the top, and those themes and patterns turned into guiding principles. And if you recall, the last time we were here in February, we went through the guiding principles and had a polling exercise to kind of get feedback from you all, whether they sounded great, if they were good enough to move forward. Again, these guiding principles are like goals. They set the tone for the plan, and we wanted to make sure that the recommendations and the strategies that you see throughout the plan all tied back to the guiding principles. Some of them tied back to multiple elements of the plan. But these served as the foundation. And so these were the guiding principles. I'll just read them real quickly to remind you. The first was related to identity, establish a unique identity that reflects Mesquite's character and enhances its aesthetics and celebrates its neighborhoods through urban design, branding, and historic preservation. Safety, promote community safety and crime prevention through environmental design and public safety initiatives. Housing, encourage a variety of quality residential development that meets the current and future housing needs of the community. Infrastructure, maintain and build quality infrastructure and roads to attract and support existing and new development. Connectivity, provide multimodal mobility options to connect people to employment, amenities, and neighborhoods, both locally and regionally. Redevelopment, develop strategies to encourage revitalization in older residential and commercial areas. And entertainment, create and or encourage a variety of destination entertainment venues and events in Mesquite. These all still sound well. We did have one comment I will note on identity, and it talked about incorporating neighborhoods within the guiding principle. And so you'll see it there. The phrase celebrates its neighborhoods. We added that into the guiding principle. All good? All right. So, again, the comprehensive plan is on the draft plan is on the website there. I'm about to walk through each chapter and just kind of give a brief summary of the chapter, the plan element. After we go through that particular plan element, then I'll stop and pause, and I'll open it up for any questions or comments or any edits, changes we might need. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to read through the draft plan, perhaps over the last couple of weeks, sipping coffee by the poolside, things like that. Hope you had a chance. Everybody read it, word for word? All right. Okay, so Chapter 1, it sets the stage for the plan. It looks at the existing plans that were done previously and over the years. It gives a community profile or community snapshot, if you will, looking at the community presently. That includes demographics, existing land use, We also have a summary of the community input. So from the surveys, from the community meetings, that information is summarized in there through infographics. And then it ends with the guiding principles as it launches off into the other plan elements. So this is just a snapshot of some of the demographics and stats that we included within this chapter. Try to make it highly visual, so a person, your average reader, can look at it and understand and see where Mesquite is presently. We also had, again, as I mentioned, the community input summary that lists the questions as well and how that information was responded to by various individuals. So before I move on to Chapter 2, are there any questions, comments? Good? Don't make this too easy on me now. I know y'all probably waiting. Chapter 2. So Chapter 2 is the future land use chapter, which is probably the most important chapter within the comprehensive plan, because for the most part, the comprehensive plan is a land use tool. And so there's a lot included in Chapter 2. We looked at the future. We had the existing land use, but also the future land use plan is included in here. The special areas, which Alexis is going to go through in a few minutes. And then at the end of each section, we have the strategies that are associated with that section summarized, which also show up within the implementation portion as well. So this was the existing land use. And for the most part, as you can see, Mesquite is pretty well developed with the exception of the eastern portion of the city along I-20. And some of those areas just west of that. And so the future land use plan, if you remember, we did the exercise. We've kind of walked through that. We talked about what's appropriate in certain areas and sections of the city, and also taking into consideration existing development and future development that's coming. And so this translated into the future land use plan, as you see here. So just flipping back between the two, you can see that the areas that were once vacant are filled in now with the future land uses. And before I move forward, are there any questions or comments on the future land use plan? Okay.
I have one question. How much land do we have available for use? I was trying to add it up. It looks like 1,300 acres.
Yeah, we have a chart in there that summarizes the total. It summarizes total for existing land use as well as the future land use. So the existing land use total you'll see there on page 26. And according to that chart, there was about 32% vacant land. And then on page 32, you'll see the totals for the future land use map. And I will say that 32% for a city like Mesquite that has been around for a long time and pretty well developed is pretty significant. It's a pretty significant amount. So you all have you're a unique city. There's not many cities. They're either don't have enough vacant land or they're pretty much built out. But you guys are kind of with that good balance. So you have a great opportunity to be able to influence and direct development in those vacant areas. Did that answer your question?
Yes, so we're looking at about 9,000 acres.
9,000.
Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, so about 9,800 acres is what's currently vacant. But yeah, and then the future land use map, of course, we we don't leave any vacancies because we're looking at into the future and what that build out would be.
And I think part of that, you talked about vacant land, but there's also charts and maps in here of redevelopment. And there's
Yes.
certain things that are just said, here's some areas that are, could be redeveloped. And I think that's also part of, in addition to the, and that's what looking 20 and 30 years out is what could you might do in 20 or 30 years.
Right,
There's
correct.
some additional things there.
So with that caveat, can I just add one more thing? So how much redevelopment usage do we have in addition to the almost 10,000 acres?
So the redevelopment areas that we identified, you'll see at the top of that chart on page 32, which we're calling the special planning areas. So those areas could be considered as redevelopment areas. So you'll see the acreages associated with each of those. You also notice when we get a little further into the plan, there's some neighborhoods that we called out, and we'll go through this a little bit more. But there are some neighborhoods that have been around for a while and could use some touch up, if you will. And so you can kind of consider those as redevelopment areas, but for the most part, they'll probably remain residential. But there could be an opportunity for some residential areas that may be residential today to redevelop into a different land use into the future. Any other questions, comments related to future land use? Okay. So Alexis is going to come and talk about and describe to you the special area plans. As I mentioned earlier, these were areas that were extracted for a couple of reasons. One is because they are special areas that are either now active and going through development, or those that may have at one time in their life had some activity and now it's kind of waned some, and so we want to see how we could revitalize those areas.
Thank you, Shad. So like Shad said, these areas were identified through the process, through the public input, through the workshops with staff and with the council members and P&Z and the stakeholders. We identified these areas as places that should have a little bit more focus, dig in a little bit deeper, and these areas have an opportunity for new development or redevelopment in the city, where if there was focused effort, a new thing could come to life. So you'll see that we have 7 of them identified across the city. The first one on the list here is Town East and Motley. This is an older shopping area. It was once a thriving neighborhood place where you went to go get your groceries, your dry cleaning, and it just needs a little bit more life into it. So the vision for this area is to be a revitalized neighborhood shopping center that incorporates new design techniques in order to bring a little bit more density and a little bit more life into the area. Then you have the downtown area, which we're all familiar with, going through the downtown infrastructure plan, a lot of different initiatives going on in that area. And we want to take advantage of downtown as an asset within the city. And so this one is more to revitalize and preserve the downtown area and bring it back to its former glory as the downtown center of Mesquite. Then you have Truman Heights, which is a known neighborhood in the area, and this one is to revitalize the area for the residential and the commercial structures in order to bring a little bit more life, make it a little bit more walkable and a safer street area. Then you have the US 80. This particular special planning area is divided by US 80 to a northern and southern section, but we felt that both areas they both have an opportunity for development and redevelopment. So in the northern section, the vision is to have an industrial district and take advantage of the existing industrial district that's there, revitalize it, create more of a district feel, and take advantage of the vacant areas for office development. On the southern section, at that prime real estate corner of US 80 and 635, create an office campus area where you can have corporate office buildings, walkable areas, and maybe incorporate a little bit of commercial development to take advantage of that high visibility corridor. Then you have the Trinity Point area. This area is primarily undeveloped right now, and this is an opportunity to take advantage of all the real estate down there. You have the development of the Trinity Point, branding in that area, and so it's really going to tie everything together. So the vision for the Trinity Point is to have a mixed-use type place where you can live, work, and play. There's opportunities for residential development of all levels, as well as office campus, commercial, and we really just want to take advantage of that corridor area and have commercial along the corridor. The Gus Thomason Special Planning Area was also identified as an area that's older and in need of revitalization of the commercial corridor. And this special planning area also tries to take advantage, is looking to revitalize the existing commercial, but also incorporate elements of residential and commercial to just revitalize the street. And then you have the Town East area, the major shopping area for Mesquite. And the vision for this area is to create a thriving regional commercial area that can stand the test of time and is able to evolve over time as trends and as the market and as interests of the people ebbs and flows. Because we want to make sure that Town East Mall and the surrounding area remains a thriving shopping area. So what kind of changes need to be done in the future, and how do we look at those changes? So these are the different special planning areas. I gave you a little snapshot. There's a deeper discussion of what the details are for each of these, but I'd be happy to. Anybody have any questions or thoughts over the special planning areas? How you feel about them? How they can, the different elements of them?
And just to add real quick, so within the scope of the comprehensive plan, we did not dive too deep into these areas, but what we wanted to do is we wanted to kind of give a springboard, create that vision, and so it talks about a few strategies in here to help with those areas, but it would be necessary to go into a deeper dive if you want to within these special planning areas to get more specific implementation. If there's any neighborhoods related to these, to have that type of engagement related to these particular areas. I think we had a question last week that asked about neighborhoods related or adjacent to some of these areas. And again, at that time during the special planning, if that goes forward, then that's when that type of engagement level, deeper dive would take place.
So, I think as we talk about the future, especially some of these older shopping centers, for example, you talked about the Town East and Motley Shopping Center, I think that we've got to be thinking about that all these situations where we would love to see this revitalization, those are all going to require people with money to invest. It's going to require people to put up real hard dollars to invest in these scenarios. And so I think as we go forward, even though we always want to have the highest standards of various codes, et cetera, we may have to just keep an open mind about being flexible in each situation. In Town East, we typically want to have a little bit higher standards, and that's a good thing. But there may be some other areas, for example, the Town East Motley area, if we've got some people willing to invest real money, real capital, we may have to be a little bit open-minded about a few things that normally would make them say, gosh, it's so hard to do business at City Hall. Not just this City Hall, but any City Hall. To get those investors in, we're going to have to be thinking about those things as we go down the road, because it looks pretty here, but at some point, who's going to invest the money and see that they can make a profit in return? So, just some thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate the broad strokes that Councilman Archer was saying, and I agree with that. I would say, and kind of speaking a little softly tonight, that the heat kind of got to me earlier today. But I I don't want to say I take issue because that's not right. That sounds confrontatory, and that's not what we're about on the comprehensive plan. But I will say that I have a level of disagreement with the US 80 corridor transitioning to industrial, even if we're talking about a mix of light and heavy industrial. For example, and we have our commissioner from the Skyline-Rugal neighborhood as well here. And the Skyline-Rugal neighborhood and the Galloway neighborhoods are bracketed on two sides by light and then heavy industrial along Town East, and that's even divided from Rollingwood Hills by light industrial. It's hard to call it light when you have 18-wheeler trucks, driving down the streets, and we're having to spend $25 million to repair those two streets. And I'm just not going to be okay with. And I also don't envision putting industrial along 80. And that's to the west of 635. My envisioning for that corridor is I think we have a perfect opportunity with the explosive growth in Kaufman County, and that goes east along 80. There's an incredible amount of population east along 80, and we have our industrial areas. So I envision that more as stop and go, neighborhood serving retail. We've got the AMC 30 there, and whether people like the AMC 30 or not, I envision more of retail serving, neighborhood serving retail for that corridor than I do an industrialization. I think, and I live, and it's not just about where I live, but I live north on the other side of 635. North of 80, and we have grocery stores, we have churches, we have the Walmart there off of 80 and Beltline, and what I envision there and what I would be okay with is a continuing development, redevelopment, re-emphasis on neighborhood serving retail, but also capturing the people who are heading down 80 and continuing down 80. And the reason is because we're going to expand 80. TxDOT in the next 5 years is going to expand 80, the road and the service roads as well. And it gives more of an opportunity for us to capture basically a whole large segment of East Texas's retail dollars who may shop at a Kohl's, shop at a I was about to say Mervyn's, but then that really demonstrates my gray hair, right? But those sort of uses, and in a way that doesn't distribute traffic into the neighborhoods like industrial uses would do. So please keep that in mind, that I would not support a continuing industrialization along 80 as a comprehensive plan issue. And I look for more, I think in Dallas you would call it CS and CR zoning districts, commercial retail and NS too. Commercial service and neighborhood service. I think we could suffer a little bit of light office frontage industrial like we have in some areas, as long as it's not heavy storage, industrial use, traffic, things of that nature. That's the number one thing. Number two, I know, I talked too long. Sorry. The number two is Motley and Town East. I don't know if you're aware, but the Gus Thomason corridor, then 30, it's a Z. Well, I don't know if it's a Z. It's kind of like a lightning bolt. But it goes down, we have a TERS that goes down Gus Thomason, then heads east-southeast along 30, and then heads, southwest, west-southwest down 30, and then heads south-southeast along Motley. And that's one total TERS that provides us with the ability to do facade work, 380 agreements, facade issues, things like that. You're talking about jazzing up that intersection. We provided the incentives and tools to do that, but any comprehensive plan needs to have consideration for Motley all the way to 30 and how that plays with that entryway just south of Eastfield. You see what I'm saying there? And I don't know if you had that consideration on as well. So I'm just pointing that out. It's very important to have that as a serving corridor. As people exit for their homes, they also have neighborhood serving retail and a connectivity to a 30 corridor. That's it.
Mayor, I just had a quick point of clarification. Mr. Miklos, in the planning document, we were really trying to focus not on the entire US 80 corridor, but it was mainly the eastern corner of LBJ and 80. So we just want to make sure, just like you had mentioned about expanding the town East Motley, I just want to make sure that we're either being concise in what we had done, or do you want to discuss trying to expand it to the entire corridor as the focus area?
Wow, I totally lost you there for just a second. I'm sorry. I think what you're saying is that US 80, the major planning redevelopment corridor, is east of 635 and not directly north of the Skyline rural neighborhood.
Yeah.
So what I said is still the same. I think that industrialization of that corridor is incompatible with both the neighborhood just south of there and also the Canada and my neighborhood just to the north of there. I think we have just revived our retail area, which is just south of Tripp but north of US 80. And we're talking about revising and doing work on the Galloway Road south of 80 as part of a county grant. We have some opportunities there to redevelop Galloway in a way that may be providing additional neighborhood retail service design elements to it. And I'd hate to see us lose that opportunity by comprehensive planning that in any sort of industrial corridor. I think we have an opportunity right at that southeast corner of US 80 and 635 to have neighborhood service and even a regional retail center, as long as they feed off and on to the service road and don't feed into the neighborhoods to increase neighborhood traffic. You see what I'm saying by that?
Yeah. So,
Mr. Miklos, are you referring to the industrialization because of the color code on the map, or?
I can't see it.
Oh,
Okay.
I think I
Because of what they
misspoke
said.
and called it industrial. It's light industrial, similar to the existing development that's right there on north of 80. And the southern section that I believe you're referring to is intended to be more of an office and not intended to be an industrial district.
Right, but I will tell you even then with that, and I appreciate that, I don't want what's north of 80 to go south of 80 either.
No,
I
well,
understand what's there. We have a drainage issue there, and we have to fix that. We're going to spend some significant money, and the businesses that are there should stay there. But south of 80, on that corner, that bracketed corner between Galloway and 635 as you head south, I think it's a mistake to do light industrial. I think that it's an opportunity to do retail, neighborhood service, and regional retail because it's a tremendous corner. TxDOT's just revived our service road areas there, and I'd hate it to be. Well, I'm not going to say specific uses because anybody could get insulted by that. But you're getting what I'm saying, right?
well, so south of 80, just for point
Yes.
of clarification, south of 80, no light industrial at all.
Not part of the plan.
It's envisioned as a office campus, like premier office space, Class A type space. That's just south, that south area. But this is exactly why we're here tonight, so we can discuss and get clarification and agree upon how we move forward.
No, I mean,
So with the south, so no office space south.
I'm not gonna say never to any of that, but what I'm saying is it's a tremendous opportunity for local neighborhood serving and even regional retail at that corner. That's a US 80 635 corner. And I'm not meaning to belabor the point, but it's a tremendous opportunity for that to serve that whole section of town, and it can even be multi-story. It could be a multi-story, how we have in some of our retail areas where you allow local serving office on a second or third floor, but that your first floor is neighborhood serving retail. Things that benefit that immediate neighborhood. And I think that is, anyway.
So neighborhood serving retail to the
And
south,
even region,
and
yeah,
then
and
to the
even
north. What would that be?
No, leave the uses there as they are. I don't want to run. I'm not saying to run anybody out of there. On the north side, you have industrial uses. we've got some work to do on our drainage issues in that whole neighborhood, and we're going to address those. But that's an established industrial district to the west of Franklin to 635, except for a few multifamily uses. So, I mean, they're going to be there for a while, and that needs to stay. But I don't want that to influence what we do on the south side. You see what I'm saying? I think the south side, we have a retail opportunity.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point as what we were talking about earlier. Some of these areas need a deeper dive to really get down into the weeds and kind of pull out what that ultimate vision is.
And I had made a comment about this last week as well, and I appreciate your comments so much because, again, on 80, that traffic is increasing more and more. It's a corridor. It's a major corridor in our city. 80, 635, southwest, you have the AMC 30. So you're talking about across from the AMC 30
right.
on that southeast area where there's land that can be developed right there. And I agree to be able to take advantage of all that traffic that goes through there, going to Forney, and there's more development going out there and more traffic going through. I think it's a great opportunity. So I was going to ask the same thing about the office development and all that. I would like to see, like what you're talking about, more retail or service-type retail to not just, like what you're saying, not just to the neighborhoods, but to the region as well that would attract those folks that are going down 80. So I appreciate those comments.
Any other comments on?
Mayor, I wanted to forgive me, I just wanted to clarify one of the thoughts I had a while ago that didn't come to me. You'd also talked about the downtown square. Tom Palmer, who used to be our economic development manager, and I had some interesting discussions early on about the downtown square when we were just kind of getting our feet wet on that. And one of the things he had talked about was years ago when he was in McKinney, revamping their downtown area. There was I believe it was an old bank building that had some doors that were very historic, but they didn't fit their current codes anymore. And yet, to get rid of those doors, it would have just killed the vibe and the character of the area. And so those are little things, and don't get me wrong, I think we're on a fantastic direction as we're moving forward with our downtown square. That was one of the thoughts I had in terms of we're going to have to be open-minded to things that may work going in the future that may not always fit with, the textbook operation of how we do things with our codes and plans, et cetera. So just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Mayor.
And I think it's good that we have these opportunities to kind of share. You guys on PNC jump in if you'd like as well. There's so many things that this is 20 and 30 years, and it's a visioning exercise to look out in the future. We have some empty land, and access is a huge part of what different businesses and opportunities look for. And so I know that we've got to take that into consideration when we're talking about what goes where. That meaning retail. Location, and visibility is part of it. But if you can't get there, if you've got to go past it, you'll probably go to the next place. And so, that's something that's also I appreciate your visioning because I know we've looked at. I've dealt with several developers through the last 4 years that have looked at this corridor. You can't get even with the new road construction. You can't get there, and they. So office complexes, things like that are part of something that I think we can talk about. And if we can get another big regional player over there to do retail, we just got to figure out how to get people to that site. And once we do, I think it'll be great. So I think I've done a really good job of listening to everybody through this process and we're just giving you feedback. Thank you.
And I believe that what you have there on Trinity Point is right on the mark because we are seeing those residential opportunities coming already, and they're coming along that Interstate 20. And so along with that, now we've got to get ready for that potential of the business growth along that corridor that needs to take place, and hopefully with a big anchor that would go there and then other retail that would build around that anchor. But I know that's on the mark there.
I agree with the light retail and neighborhood serving retail down 80, period. And then we have a shopping district. And like the mayor said, if we could figure out how to get people there, even just getting to the shopping centers there on 80, right underneath the bridge of Town East where we find Ross and Coles. It's very hard getting there. You can see it, and it looks like you can get there from the surface road, but that's not possible. So I would like to consider light retail 80 South and 80 North.
We got that noted. Anything else before we move forward on the special planning areas? We're good.
Always.
So what we wanted to do for the purpose of this presentation is just to kind of give you some highlighted strategies. There's no particular reason why we pull these out. We just wanted to just show you a couple. But the full list of the strategies you'll see there on the boards. The implementation table is also in the back of the in the back of the plan. But after each section, as I mentioned earlier, summarizes or has a summary of the strategies listed. So for the purposes of the presentation, we just pulled out a couple just so we can, read them to you and give you a little bit more information. So this first one says to create a small area plan program with the methodology and criteria for prioritizing planning areas and applying the strategies and principles of the comprehensive plan with a greater degree of detail for a defined area, neighborhood, or corridor. So this strategy is really to help these special planning areas to give a recommendation to plan and go into a little bit more detail within these areas. Small area plans, if you will, special area plans. So this is what this strategy is speaking to. The next one is to develop a diagnostic report that outlines deficiencies and opportunities to better align land use regulations with the updated comprehensive plan. So with the comprehensive plan, we've got the vision that is being established for the entire city and for these special planning areas. With the strategy or recommendation is saying is that to look at the regulations and ordinances that are in place now, and if there are anything in that might hinder that vision being implemented, then it needs to be looked at, adjusted, or things of that nature. Okay. Any other questions before we move to the next chapter? Any other questions on land use? All right. Chapter 3 is housing in neighborhoods. So within this chapter, you'll find some trends on housing trends. You'll find the neighborhood housing conditions. It talks about neighborhood programs, grants, resources, and some development guidelines. This is the map that I was referring to earlier that highlights neighborhoods within the community that are categorized into 3 categories. You see preserve or preservation, restore or restoration, rehabilitate or rehabilitation. So the preserve category are those neighborhoods that are in good condition now, perhaps your newer neighborhoods, maybe no older than five years old, but everything is good. They're working properly, function properly, no major exterior maintenance issues. The restore are neighborhoods that are beginning to show some signs of some slight wear and tear. And then the rehabilitate are neighborhoods and homes that have exceeded, their useful life, maybe have major renovations needed or maintenance. And so you'll see the map there that highlights those neighborhoods, those various areas. Again, these are some general outlines or boundaries, if you will. But what it does is it helps staff and you all to identify these areas to see in the future where you might need to focus some neighborhood services, programs, or things of that nature, or even just encourage and educate homeowners in that area. A lot of times it's not necessarily you all doing something, but just educating the citizens in that area or pointing them to resources for them to be able to update or maintain their homes. And so for the most part, you'll see here that within the community, the majority of your neighborhoods are in good condition. There are just a few areas that need some attention as we move into the future. Any questions on this map?
Yeah. I see that there's percentages for each group where you have like 74% are under preserve. Do we have numbers, actual numbers, how many homes in each category? How many are preserved? How many homes are restored?
We don't have that exact number, the number of homes.
Can we get that?
And what page are you referring to with the percentages?
On page 80. Within each paragraph there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we didn't count the exact number of homes. Again, these aren't exact boundaries. So there's just kind of some general numbers.
39,000, 40,000 single-family dwelling units.
Mr. Gosser, what was the let me try to dive deeper into the question you were asking. What was the...
Well, I had the percentage. I was just wondering what that percentage equals in actual houses. So if there's 39,000, I mean, I can figure that out.
How many housing units do we have? And then times 74%, that gives you a general estimate of the number of units that would be preserved. And then each one has a percentage, 14%, I've said 40,000. That's what they're coming to.
So you're just trying to get the numbers attached to those percentages. Okay, we can do that.
We could do approximate. And is that something that needs to be listed in this section?
Probably just put it next to the
percentage. Okay. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I appreciate this map. I think when we're talking about the preservation of, the restoring of, and then the rehabbing of, I think we have to be very, very particular in exactly what that means to our current residents in those neighborhoods. Many cities can go in two different directions when it has an older neighborhood. It can adopt preservation ordinances that, quite frankly, encourage people to buy, tear down houses, and build new structures in a neighborhood that can completely change the character of the neighborhood. The best example, the best word for that is McMansions, and I know a lot of people would be thrilled if the housing value increased, but if you have a certain character of a neighborhood and then all of a sudden somebody buys a lot, tears down a house, and builds some monstrosity 3 or 4 times as large, and you can't even see around it, you can't see into it, it can destroy a character of a neighborhood. So I guess I'm just noting that it's easy to say rehab, but then what exactly does that mean? Does that mean working with the specific character of the neighborhood that it is, trying to preserve the ability of the people who live there right now to continue to live in their homes, not have the character of the neighborhood that is now disrupted, destroyed, versus as a policy decision, maybe publicly or not, saying, and I'm not for this, I'm just saying that many cities have done this, they pick a neighborhood and they adopt ordinances that encourage basically moving everybody out of a neighborhood through an economic activity. And so I think it's very important when we're talking about these areas. So what does preservation really mean? Does it mean you can't tear down a house and then build a completely different looking house in a neighborhood? Or does it not mean that? Does it mean that we have sensitivities toward lot size, lot coverage, rebuilds or remodeling that is in the same character as the neighborhood that it's already in? Or do we not care about that? And do we instead look towards completely disrupting a neighborhood with an eye towards 20 years from now, a neighborhood looks completely different? And just one example of that, you have both Fort Worth and Dallas. You've had significant neighborhoods and areas that, I mean, it's an awful word, but gentrification has occurred. And you basically had political warfare between the people who were there versus the people moving in there, and a lot of just incredible disruptions over long-standing neighborhoods. And so, long-winded statement. What I'm getting at is what I'd like to see are ordinances and directions where we try to preserve the character of the neighborhood, and that we have an intent to keep the people who are in their houses now in their houses, keep the character of those neighborhoods, and that we work on the infrastructure and the accessibility to for nearby parks, a way to enhance what is there, a way to help preserve what is there, instead of adopting ordinances that would compel or incentivize a complete redo of a neighborhood and clearing out those residents that are there and trying to replace them with people who don't live in Mesquite right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think for the purpose of the comprehensive plan, being a high-level document, this map would be a tool just to pretty much make you aware of areas that are needed. And I think we have a strategy in here that talks about perhaps revamping or we could talk about the neighborhood plans. And so I think at that level, that's where the specifics that you are referring to would be addressed.
You mean like conservation ordinances, historic district ordinances, things like that?
Yeah. Doing the planning or neighborhood plan, that's where you would have those discussions.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Miklos, I'll just clarify, I think where I would think we would want to insert that, we have strategies on page 82 at the bottom of the preserve, restore, and rehabilitate. So I think one of the strategies would be to implement these types of ordinances and maybe even designate certain neighborhood zones. Would that be something we should include?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. It's like we've had this conversation before.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to kind of talk about one of the elephant in the room type situations. First, let me say, generally speaking, I think as a community we're doing well and we're moving in the right direction when it comes to reinvestment in neighborhoods. We're certainly, I think, doing a lot more for code enforcement issues, and we're also trying to provide tools for folks that are just unable, either financially or due to health or age, older senior status, unable to do some of the work that needs to be done. So we're working on all those things, and as we talked about last night, we've got investors doing infill development in older neighborhoods. So those are all good things that I pray continue to move forward. However, even if we keep making progress on those issues, and this is something that's difficult that we have to think about going forward, is we do have a lot of neighborhoods who are having more and more individuals or groups or families moving into one home. And again, it's nothing that we ever want to have to send staff out to go check on, because these are hard things to enforce. Everybody says, well, we're all related, et cetera. We also have people renting out rooms at times, and I understand people need to survive. But all that equals to more and more cars parked on streets, more and more congestion in those areas. We started a good conversation last year when we talked about the accessory dwelling ordinance. We're not going to allow people to build little houses in the backyard anymore. Unfortunately, that's no longer for grandma, but it's oftentimes multiple individuals living in those dwellings that have more cars. We've talked about at some point, and I hope that we get there, having an ordinance that says if you want to add on to your property for ever so many square feet, you've got to add parking spaces for those things. Those are conversations that will get there, but at some point we may also have to talk about the more uncomfortable matters of how many people can live in a home and how would we enforce those things so our neighborhoods don't become quote-unquote multifamily when they were built to be single family. Uncomfortable, not easy to deal with, but something I think we're going to have to talk about at some point, and felt like this was a good time to bring that up. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else? Okay. Highlighted strategies from this section: create and maintain a database of neighborhood conditions to better direct funding resources for housing and neighborhood improvements. So this is really just kind of getting a good grasp and understanding of the existing neighborhoods and what their needs are, or future needs are, current or future needs. And the second one is to encourage residential developers to design subdivisions to incorporate the character that enhances Mesquite's character community theme through education and possible incentives. I would note that last week during the stakeholder meeting, there were several residential developers there that talked about how they're making efforts of creating subdivisions that have a variety of housing types, making sure that they're in tune with the character and the themes of the city of Mesquite. Any questions before we move forward on Chapter 3? All right. Chapter 4, mobility and circulation. This section highlights the existing networks and amenities, talks a little bit about regional mobility plans and what's going on in an area adjacent to the city of Mesquite and also within Mesquite. It has the existing thoroughfare plan, looks at a couple of network recommendations, and it ends with the strategies. This is the map of your existing thoroughfare plan. The thoroughfare plan through this comprehensive plan effort was not updated, but we did look at it and reference it as we went through the various future land use. So just keeping in mind, as there are certain land uses, especially along the I-20, where you'll probably have a lot of your major new development, just making sure that you have, as the mayor mentioned earlier, access to these certain areas, that we're not creating any areas of congestion, just making sure that they align properly with the future land use and those land uses that are coming along. So the thoroughfare plan at some point in time, as you start to see some of this new development and some of these areas are filling in some of your areas and even the redevelopment areas, just keep in mind that map will need to be updated. And these are this is a image of one of the boards that that's in the back there that you can look at a little closer. It talks about bike and pedestrian facilities, and then this chart here on the right side highlights the projects, the TxDOT projects that are in Mesquite, those that are underway, beginning soon, those that are into the future, 4 years, and then 5-10 years, and then some of those longer-term projects. So you'll see that there's a lot of projects and investment being made in the transportation mobility network in and around the city of Mesquite. So again, a city that's in a unique, in a special situation here that has a lot of opportunity and a lot of investment coming to the area. I think that's a great thing. A couple of highlighted strategies from this section is to explore opportunities to implement additional transportation options, such as a city circulator system to provide connectivity and accessibility to major points of interest within the city, and to identify ideal locations and implement sidewalks along key local streets and all collector and arterial streets leading from neighborhoods to parks and trails within a 1/2 mile walking distance. Just making sure that the community is well connected with various modes of transportation, especially those areas that are near neighborhoods, so people have access to the great trails and parks within the city limits. Any questions or comments for Chapter 4? Okay. Chapter 5, Community Design and Character, looks at the community character, community image, how you manage that and enhance it, and some design regulations. Again, this is a snapshot of a board that's in the back that you can take a closer look at, but just shows some ideas of signage and branding and how that's incorporated non-residential design related to non-commercial, commercial and retail development. Again, with the latest, rulings from Austin, there may be some tweaks and some limits on building materials and things of that nature, but I think there's still a way to encourage design that's complementary within the city of Mesquite. And then also looking at the neighborhoods and how those pedestrian connections and placemaking, park and open space. This map just shows existing and potential future gateways, major gateways within the city of Mesquite. One of the things we heard throughout the input with the community as well as stakeholders and others is having a character within Mesquite, a branding where people know that you're in a place, you're in Mesquite, you're in a special place. So identifying those either through gateways, small landscaping enhancement, things of that nature, whether big or small, all play into that role in building your character and maintaining and enhancing your character. Highlighted strategies from this section is to develop and maintain a comprehensive branding and signage master plan to identify opportunities for branding and plan for strategic implementation based on available funding. So a comprehensive branding and signage plan, it helps to kind of pull in and give you one common theme or character for the community, what you're known for, making sure that when you are introducing new signage or gateways in the community that it follows a specific standard, and that you're not creating things that might look differently, although you're still trying to achieve that branding, but you help by making sure that there's a common theme with however, whether it's the materials that you use or the colors. The second is to develop a recognition/reward program to encourage business owners to enhance their properties through landscaping and other design aesthetics. So I always like to say that a comprehensive plan is not totally on the city to implement. There are things that your citizens and business owners can do to help implement various things and strategies within the community. So this strategy is really something meant to be small, just to help encourage business owners to enhance their properties. It could be a small recognition at a city council meeting, just to say, hey, you were the property of the month, or something along those lines, just to encourage them and to upkeep their property. So they're making that investment within their property, and that helps to upkeep that particular neighborhood, that area, and ultimately the city of Mesquite.
Chad, we have done a little bit of that, and I think it really shows the Town East area. A number of years ago, we kind of put the signage as we needed to replace street lights, street lamps, and street, even the blades. That whole section that we designated. When you're in that section, you're in the Town East retail area, and I think doing this in a comprehensive way for neighborhoods, saying that certain neighborhoods, to your point, even in residential neighborhoods that can kind of have a common flavor. If you got the community groups together and everybody planting the same bushes or the same tree or whatever, that you could really, in a few years, know that you're driving through a certain part of town that way. And I think just having a vision for it, as you've laid out, and is really great. Which we talked about multiple times about our neighborhoods, the identities and stuff. So, the redevelopment, especially some of the older areas, that as we try to encourage them to redevelop, and that I think it's a great idea. So, yes,
Mayor.
Sure.
If I could just, those are very good comments. I'd like to piggyback and just add to that. With this thought process of identification and branding, and you kind of just hit it, but I'll just add to that and say, and I've talked about this many times, we've got people who've lived in this community for 40, 50, 60 years, and who grew up in an Edgemont Park or Rolling Hills or Casa View or Mesquite Park, but their kids and grandkids may never know those neighborhoods. In fact, I run into folks who are adults oftentimes who have no idea what their subdivisions are called or what their neighborhoods are called. But typically, if you go to Creek Crossing or a more contemporary neighborhood, you'll see is. But if you go to Rollingwood Hills, if you go to Valley View Heights, and I could list 50 other, especially older, more distressed neighborhoods, there is no such signage, and it's not a quick fix. But perhaps if we look at down the road, as developers come in and have the opportunity to make a lot of money in this community, maybe some of the give backs that we ask for would be, hey, would you fund a couple of signs or neighborhood entrance signs for X neighborhoods, so those young people growing up can begin to have that self-identity of where they're growing up and where they're living, and it becomes their neighborhood, their place, their sense of place. I think that's important as we go forward. Thank you, Mayor.
I also agree with neighborhood branding. A lot of our neighborhood watch meetings have included requests for neighborhood branding, for community branding, and gateways to our communities. So if we could just maybe notate that as an add-on to this comprehensive plan, that would be great.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Just that I agree as well when she mentioned about the gateways too, and I think about the main corridors again, the gateways into our city that we continue. I know coming on 30 towards Dallas, we'll see a large sign out there, Mesquite. You know you're coming into Mesquite. If it's 635 from the south, or if it's 80 from the east, or if it's coming around the big town area, that we continue to develop that signage that people know when they're coming into our city, and to make it something really nice. And yeah, I appreciate what Councilman Archer said as well. Developers that are coming in, industries that are coming in that want to help with that as well. That would be great. That'd be awesome. So.
Okay. All right. Chapter 6, Public Safety and Health. Section highlights existing conditions related to public safety, health, transportation and recreation, community resources. Talks about safety through design, through community design. Public safety and health is, I would say, somewhat relatively new to comprehensive plans. More cities are starting to look at, their public safety and the health of their community. And so for the most part, this chapter is educational, but it also provides some strategies related to safety and health. Again, a snapshot of a board that you'll find in the back, take a closer look at. But you'll see there that map shows your existing parks, and you can see them in relationship to your neighborhoods. Guess it's no surprise that along the I-20 area, you don't have any parks at the moment. But again, it'd be important as those communities, subdivisions start to develop, that they also kind of reflect what you have in the area of Mesquite that's pretty well developed, to make sure that you have that overall connectivity, and then safety through community design. Again, this is talks about, when you have a development, whether it's commercial, retail, that landowners take consideration of how they do their landscape and making sure that they're not creating any areas that might be unsafe, potentially unsafe, or those dark areas. So when it comes to lighting and making sure you have the proper lighting on property as well as neighborhoods as well. And then it talks about community resources related to public health. So a couple of highlighted strategies here is to conduct a health impact assessment to inform planning and promote public health. So this is HIA is a tool to give you a kind of base point, if you will, of where your community stands in terms of its healthiness, and then it helps to point you in the direction of areas that need more attention and how you address those issues. And then the second is to promote a healthy community by providing agent in place and residential development designs by allowing a variety of housing types and housing units. Again, having a variety of housing types, housing units in the community is very important. If an individual or family wants to live their entire life in the city of Mesquite, there should be some options that allows for that so that they can age in place. So that's what this strategy talks to.
I have a question.
I'll try not to be long-winded this time.
You're fine.
I know a comprehensive plan is a general sort of bubble and identification of visions and generalized goals. Earlier this year, I was pushing pretty hard, and I continue to want to, for parkland dedication as a specific requirement for all residential and residentially related uses. And to the extent that it fits within the discussion of the comprehensive plan, I think that it is correct for us to identify what we want parkland dedication per residential unit, whether it's single family, townhouse, or any apartments in the future, to say as a comprehensive plan element, we need to have X amount of parkland to come in as a part of that. Especially since, and you just stated it straightforward, we really don't have that on our I-20 corridor. As the I-20 corridor develops, and it will develop, I think that it's important for a comprehensive plan to say, and we're going to want, at a minimum, this amount of parkland, developed parkland, green space, as a part of that, as a directory to, when either land in our city limits or land that's in our ETJ but is asking to be annexed into our city limits, how much green space are we requiring? How much green space and parkland are we going to require? Developed trails, connectivity of those developed trails from one subdivision to another, to have that all going there. I realize that we need to revise and get an updated parkland master plan as part of that as well. And I know, and staff is winking at each other right now because they're like, we're working on it. And I understand that. But the comprehensive plan needs to allude to a specific parkland and green space goal, and then we need to have parkland dedication ordinances that also play into our parks master plan. All three of those documents and all three of those things need to play hand in hand and be synergistic, so that when somebody comes in with a 500 single family development, that we know that our comprehensive plan says we need X amount of acres dedicated parkland space. That's our goal. That's our floor. So I think that's very important when you're talking about public safety and health, that we have a specific identification in our comprehensive plan for that works with those other two documents.
Yep. And we might have to talk about the specifics of it, because the comprehensive plan won't be able to hold anybody to a certain number. So maybe, like you mentioned, more generalized statement. But then we could work on the verbiage and wording of that.
Right.
But yeah, making sure that matches across the board is important.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. So last section of the comprehensive plan is your to-do list, if you will. It's the implementation plan. So it talks about the role of implementation, education, about the comprehensive plan. That's education within the city, but your residents as well. Some guidelines on updating the plan in the future. And then the bulk of that section is the implementation table. So all those boards back there, you'll see all those and how they are related to each chapter, the strategies, how they relate to each plan element. It gives a time frame for each of those. Well, let me start over. So you have the chapter, whether it's related to whatever plan element is related to the strategy. It lists the guiding principle, and it shows iconically how they're tied to each guiding principle. There's a legend at the bottom for you to kind of browse back to see how it's, which theme is related to. The responsible party, these don't include all the responsible parties or all the parties that would be responsible for helping with implementation, but it just gives a few lead entities that will, at the least get it started, and then the time frame. So the 1 clock refers to 1 to 3 years, if you will, and this is on. Let me give you the page number. This is on page 148. So the 1 clock is a short term, that's 0 to 5 years. 2 clocks represent midterm, 5 to 10 years, and then 3 clocks is either 10 years plus or it's an ongoing recommendation strategy. So meaning it's something that's continual. So it lists all the strategies that are summarized at the end of each plan element are all listed here in the table, so you can see them broken out this way, how they relate to the guiding principles, responsible parties, and the time frame for implementation. So again, you can see them in your draft plan, but also on that those boards in the back, you can take a closer look. Any questions or comments on implementation section? So any questions or comments related to the comprehensive plan in general?
All right, so I've listened to this whole plan, and I've been waiting for it maybe to come up, and maybe I missed it, I don't know. But I know I have a lot of residents that say, we've got plenty of shopping, we have plenty of restaurants, we have no entertainment. So if we're in the comprehensive plan, do we have that, we need to get more entertainment, not only our residents here, but for other people from other cities coming to our city to bring revenue in? I'd like to see something, some type of entertainment brought into the system someplace.
I know within some of those vision areas where it's appropriate, it talks about entertainment. But could you dive a little bit deeper into that? Like, are you looking? Is it how you attract entertainment, or?
I'm just trying to figure out some way to get some type of entertainment in here. A big water park, a bowling alleys, something for our residents to do. We've got a lot of great parks, but parks are only good when the weather's good, and people want things to do other than just go to a park. There's things at night that they want to do. So we need something I think we need something in the comprehensive plan that for some type of entertainment center, something for our residents to go and do other than just to attend our parks.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a huge arena, bigger than the rodeo.
Okay, noted.
I think that just looking at different strategy areas, maybe the future land use strategies, maybe come up with a general statement talking about the different types of uses and activities.
Okay, we'll address that.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody else have anything before he finishes up? Comments?
Just my comment is simply, I'm excited that we're at this place where we can be talking about a comprehensive plan for our city because, again, the economy is strong. People are buying homes out there. There's development that's still taking place, and we're at a place right now we haven't been in quite some time. And I think, again, about 2 or 3 years ago when we were starting to build out there in Hagen Hills, and there wasn't any real development of homes in the previous, 13, 14, 15 years. And now we're at a time right now where there's a lot of growth. So that's my comment tonight. If it wasn't for that, and we just need to continue to see that economy growing like that, but we got to grow with it. So I'm excited about that.
Mr. Archer.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to just throw a comment of thank you to all of our planning and zoning commissioners for partnering with us through this process, as well as the legwork that you do week in and week out with a lot of things that we deal with. It really makes our job a lot easier when we come up on a lot of different zoning cases and whatnot. So grateful for the work that you all put in, the hours that you give. I had the privilege of serving on your board many, many years ago and learned a whole lot that helps me today. So just a big thank you to all of you and for being here tonight with us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Appreciate it. What's next?
Is that all the comments? All right.
Looks that way.
So next step, so we're here today doing the briefing with you all. So we'll work with staff on how we move forward. We'll incorporate these changes. We've noted these changes and additions and edits, so we'll incorporate those. And so when we return and do a briefing during the public hearing, we'll make note of those and we'll show you where and how we incorporated those. So let you know that you've been heard tonight. Again, the draft plan for anybody who wants to share with others, your residents and constituents, can be found at the website at this web address. And so that's all we have in terms of the summary of the presentation. I think what we want to do now is just allow you time to view the boards closer. We'll be here if you have any other comments or questions and things that might pop up after. We'll be here to address those as well. Again, we appreciate your time, and we thank you all for the opportunity to work with the city of Mesquite through this comprehensive plan process. It's been great. It's been fun. It's always great to work with community, and especially a community that involves a lot. I mean, you guys invited stakeholders to the table, your residents, and so really appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you for all the guidance, Mr. Kahili.
Mayor, just checking with the city attorney as well. If we're going to stick around and discuss items on the board, it's probably best that we stay in open meeting. And then, so my suggestion is we save 10 to 15 minutes of talking so there's no discussions that are outside the open meetings rules, and then come back, adjourn, and then where people can go. And if less everybody's, we've got quorum problems.
So do we want to stick around and in 10 or 15 minutes we need 4 people here to adjourn? Or do you want longer? Do you want less time? Do you want to adjourn now? We don't talk about these things. What do you want to do?
There might be some visitors that want to look at the posters that
Sure.
are out and make comment. So
I like
I
that.
would agree to 15 minutes.
8:15. That'll give us almost 20 minutes of time. If we need longer, guys, we can stay. That's not a problem. Okay? So get up, enjoy, boards, comments. Thank you. So one thing I'd like to say thank you to our group that is still working on this, Chad and your people. We appreciate all the work y'all put into it. I know that's what you do for a living, but as you said, this document is something that is going to be out there for a number of years, and so it may not be absolutely 100% perfect, but I think it's a good working and living something for us to be proud of as a city, and I think it's an old statement, but if you plan to fail, you fail to plan, or something like that. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Said it backwards. Anyway, but I appreciate, too, all the work, and I know P&Z and our citizens, we've had quite a bit of input, and everyone's weighed in on this, and we were talking about, I appreciate you, Councilman Miklos, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem. I have such a hard time. I apologize saying that for both of you guys. But the comments about, the existing neighborhoods, and you drive around even Old Mesquite, where several of us live, down those streets, and there's some of the old homes gone, and they're not really McMansions, but these big, nice-looking two-story brick homes are very much out of place, and they're beautiful houses. But we really didn't have any plan. We did, they went in, they bought a couple of lots and built, and nobody said anything. So, but if you drive up and down there, you've got just nice early 1900 homes, and then this beautiful big brick house, which is just kind of sticks out like sore thumbs. So, I think as we're looking at in the future, I think it's a great concept, and yes, we may get tired of hearing about your park thing, but I tell you what, I appreciate it very much. So I wanted to tell you it's something I think is needed in our future. I wish we'd been doing it for the last 40 or 50 years. So thank you for mentioning those things. With all that being said, do we need a motion, or we just, okay. So we have an adjourned. Do we have a second over here? There you go. So all in favor? We're adjourned. All right, let's go. Thank you all for being here.